Hello everyone and welcome back. I am Jenny and this is a channel dedicated to helping school counselors finding their way towards private practice as therapists. And of course I am offering this as information, but not as a supervisor or as a therapist for the purposes of this video or any of the others in this channel. But today we're going to talk about when you are ready to terminate and discharge with a client. What does that look like? Particularly on the paperwork side of things, there are lots of different reasons that we might find ourselves needing to terminate with a client. You've gone through the treatment and they have reached their goals, they are confident and ready to live their life, taking those training wheels of therapy off and flying free. And when that happens, then you can maybe even have a really sweet, wonderful experience of getting to go through with them and kind of looking in the rearview mirror where all they came from, where they started, all the work they did, all the things that they learned and put into place, and successes that they've had, all the skills that they can take with them moving forward into the rest of their life. And you can just have maybe some tender moments of sharing your appreciation for the relationship, both of you, and letting the termination session be a chance for some closure. We often, in much of our lives outside of therapy, we don't always get the chance for that closure and getting to have a really kind of healthy goodbye a lot of times. And so all of that can be wrapped into termination in those cases. Now, sometimes termination happens for other reasons. It could be that the client moves and they need a provider in the new state where they're living because you're not licensed in their new location. Or it could be that it's just not a good fit. And I like to tell my clients or potential clients when first meeting with them, that happens. And not to be surprised by it, I'm not offended by it. It's okay to let me know, hey, I'm looking for something different from what you offer, and I can help them to find whatever it is that they're looking for. And that's what I really want to be doing. At the end of the day, we want our clients to find healing and meet their goals. And so sometimes that's going to take some trial and error figuring out what's going to work. Either it's, with ourselves or sending them somewhere else, getting them referrals for other things that are going to help them get what they need. But you can still feel like you were a part of that process and you're helping them to get where they're wanting to go, either way. And then sometimes we need to be the ones to terminate. Maybe we are just finding that we have done a lot to try to help the client, but they're just not making progress. And so at a certain point, it becomes our ethical obligation to say, okay, again, with that ultimate goal being that you get the help that you're needing and deserving, if it's not working here, then I need to say something so we can work on looking at what else might help you get where you need to go. Another way that it might go is the opposite direction. We have that ethical obligation still to say, all right, you are doing fantastic and have been for quite some time. So we have this ethical obligation to let clients know, either when they're doing well, hey, you're doing fantastic, and let's look at starting to taper off maybe with the therapy. And I have some clients who might say, well, I don't want to do that. So then I might just offer to them, it is something for me kind of ethically, the goal, and I try to tell this to folks when they first come into their first session, the goal of therapy is to help you get what you need and then to not do therapy anymore. So even in that first initial visit, we talk about how discharge is going to be a part of the whole process. So it's not a surprise when it comes, or when, maybe we're needing to talk about it. You also might have to discharge or move towards termination for the opposite kind of situation. If things are not really progressing and it just doesn't seem like, if you feel like you've reached an impasse, or if there's other barriers that are just making it to where treatment is not really happening. And some examples of that could be a person needs a higher level of care because they are just having so many risks going on in their life. They are actively planning for suicide, or they are really in the throes of an addiction that is making it pretty impossible for you to do any work with them on your side of things. So those are just some potential examples, depending on what you're doing in your private practice, what your specialties are, and what you are equipped to work with. I do like to let folks know when we're first meeting, hey, there's all kinds of ways that this might go up or down over time. Sometimes people do some therapy with me and then they need to go to a higher level of care, or the opposite. They do therapy with me on a weekly basis, and then we taper it to maybe every other week, and then monthly, and then eventually we terminate. And I do have sometimes folks who terminate with me and then come back at a later date when they need something else. So all of these are potential ways that it might go. So I like to let people know that ahead of time. And then on the paperwork side of it, I'll go ahead and show that to you now. Again, here we are with Toby's chart. And we've had our session. And now I did make a discharge summary. In simple practice, you can also just put a little chart note in where there's this box here at the top. And so you can see I did that. Toby reached out by phone, let me know he didn't want to make any more appointments. So I did the discharge summary. And then here you can see what that summary looks like. And again, I will edit it so you can see what's in there. We put the date that we're doing the discharge. When did we start services with Toby? When did we terminate? How many sessions did he get? And then the reason for discharge. Response to medications. Other agencies or providers involved. It's best practice when you can to notify other providers, let them know you're terminating with the mutual client. And then, how was the client's condition at discharge, the diagnosis when they started, and then when they ended. Sometimes that changes. What kind of services were actually used over the course of treatment, and then what was the presenting problem at intake and the progress over the course of treatment. So, this kind of gives you a synopsis that then is there to sort of summarize what happened in treatment for the duration of the services. And then any follow-up, referrals provided. In this case, Toby didn't want any, so I did not provide them. Again, one thing that some folks say is really best practice would be to not just have the conversation about termination, but follow up with a letter that just kind of makes it really crystal clear. Reason for wanting to kind of terminate at all and to be pretty concrete about when termination is happening. It's a liability concern if something were to happen to Toby later and maybe he did something to harm himself or someone else, for example. Then just being able to show very clearly we terminated, we had a clear conversation about it, and it was communicated to Toby, so there was no question. I was no longer his provider at the time that these other things happened. It just helps to maybe protect you a little bit from some of that liability. So that's basically, in a nutshell, some things about termination and the discharge summary note. Hope that helps. When we meet next time, I'll just share a little bit about marketing, how to get clients, and then so we can talk about that more in our next video. For now, I wish you well, and I do hope that you keep in mind that you have options and opportunities.